great to be here with you. We just finished a tour of a local factory where they're assembling the heavy machinery and parts that are needed for mining and pipelines and other industrial processes. And let me tell you, we have the greatest workers in the world, the very best people anywhere on planet Earth, and from all corners of the earth. We're blessed to have so many brilliant immigrants working so hard. And I was a little bit heartbroken to hear some of their stories, that they came here with high hopes and a dream, and find that those dreams are dashed. After 8 years of Trudeau, life costs more, work doesn't pay, housing costs have doubled, and crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder now reign in our streets. As we've seen a mother the other day gunned down by a stray bullet fired out of the gun of an offender who had violated 16 different parole orders, but Trudeau's catch and release justice system turned him loose to kill another person. This is more and more common in our streets, and it must end. The good news is that Canada wasn't like this before Justin Trudeau, and it won't be like this after he's gone. We're going to bring home lower prices by axing the carbon tax. This carbon tax is now 14 cents a litre. Trudeau's plan is to raise it to 61 cents a litre. That will not only drive up heat and grocery bills, heat and gas bills, but also it will make food more expensive, because if you tax the farmer's fuel and the trucker's fuel, they have to pass those prices on to groceries. And that is why food is so expensive. So I will axe the tax to bring home lower prices. We'll also get interest rates down. Now, of course, it is the Bank of Canada that sets interest rates, but the Government of Canada sets the environment. And these monstrous deficits through which Trudeau has doubled our national debt, they put pressure on inflation and on interest rates. By balancing the budget, we can bring home lower inflation and lower interest rates, and I will do that by eliminating waste and mismanagement, ending the bonuses for incompetent executives like the ones paid out just the other day to the Bank of Canada and to the Infrastructure Bank, by cutting back on contracting and consulting fees, by ending wasteful initiatives like the hunting rifle buyback. And by bringing in a dollar-for-dollar law that requires politicians find $1 of savings for each new dollar of spending. That way we can balance the budget, which will allow us to bring down inflation and interest rates. That will bring home lower prices. We're also going to make work pay again. It doesn't pay to work hard in Canada anymore. All the taxes and clawbacks chew up your paycheck. So you go out and earn an extra $1, and your child benefit is clawed back. Then you pay income tax, and then payroll tax, and gas tax and carbon tax to get to work. We're punishing work. We should reward work. A Poilievre government will cut income taxes and reform the clawbacks so people bring home more of each dollar they earn, and hard work actually pays off. And we need everybody to have an excellent wage doing the job for which they're qualified. And that is why I will remove the gatekeepers and allow our brilliant immigrants to work in their professions. We have 20,000 immigrant doctors and 32,000 immigrant nurses banned from working in our hospitals because they have no way of proving whether they're qualified. In the trades, this is not a problem. Today we just met these trades workers, many of them were immigrants, but they had a simple way to prove their qualifications. It's called the Red Seal exam. There's no Blue Seal exam for the professions, so you have to go through a whole winding maze of bureaucracy that can take 7 or 8 years, cost too much money, and condemn brilliant, educated immigrants to low-wage jobs forever. I'm proposing the federal government work with the provinces to create a Blue Seal testing standard so that immigrants can write a test, prove they are qualified, and get to work. The ambassador from the Philippines told me that only 11% of Filipino nurses in Canada are allowed to practice. In the States, they can write an international nursing exam and get to work within weeks. Why don't we bring that kind of a national exam to Canada, let them get a Blue Seal, and then they can work anywhere in the country, having proven they're qualified. We could bring tens of thousands of doctors and nurses into the system that way. We're going to bring homes that people can afford. Right now, Canada's housing costs have doubled after 8 years of Trudeau. Rent has doubled, mortgage payments have doubled, and of course, the needed down payment has doubled. Our housing is almost double the cost as in the United States. When it comes to housing and Trudeau, it's double trouble. We need more houses. And the answer is to speed up permitting. The cost of government permits and the associated bureaucracy and taxes works out to almost $400,000 for every new home in Toronto, and $1 million for every new home in Vancouver. So the cities have got to speed up and lower the cost of these permits. I'm going to require cities speed up and lower cost of permits. I'll require they permit 15% more home building per year, or they'll lose their federal grants. But those that beat the 15% target will get a building bonus. I'll also require every federally funded transit station be pre-permitted for high-density sky-rise apartments so that young people and seniors can live right next to the bus or train. And I'm going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and tens of thousands of federal acres of unused land to build hundreds of thousands of new affordable homes. We need to bring homes people can afford, and we need to bring in more skilled trade immigrants, a special accelerated stream for building trades workers sponsored by employers and unions to come here and help us build those houses. Finally, we want those homes to be in safe neighborhoods. Crime is raging out of control. The catch and release policies of Justin Trudeau, which he passed in Bill C-75, have led to the crime wave we see today. The same violent offenders are released over and over again. In fact, as I said earlier, the killer who killed that beautiful mother just the other day near the drug injection site, he had violated 16 different parole orders. 16. Why is he released again after 6? We are all for a second chance. A young person makes a mistake. Maybe they get in a bar fight. Give them a second chance. But I'm not in favor of 150 chances. But ironically, in Vancouver, the same 40 people were arrested 6,000 times. 6,000 arrests for 40 people. That's 150 arrests per offender. If you just took those 40 people off the streets, you'd have 6,000 fewer crimes. That's 6,000 fewer people shot, stabbed, hit with a baseball bat. We can bring home safe streets. Canada wasn't like this 8 years ago. We had safe streets. But Justin Trudeau's policies have given us danger. I will also ban hard drugs, stop these tent cities. Instead, we'll put people in treatment and recovery so that we can bring them home drug-free. We need to unite our country around freedom, and that's why I'm also going to repeal the censorship laws like C-11 so that your businesses can thrive. I don't believe that the CRTC should censor you or decide which media organizations are promoted and which are demoted. It should be determined by the click, not the clique. Everyday viewers, readers, and listeners should decide what they watch, and there should be a free market for information. And that's what we will restore when I am Prime Minister. This is all common sense. It's the common sense of the common people united for our common home. Now let's bring it home. Thank you. We have to reverse the policies that caused this inflation. So Trudeau has run over $500 billion of deficits. He's doubled our debt. He's added more debt than all prime ministers combined. To finance it, the Bank of Canada printed money. The money supply has grown by $600 billion in 3 years. That's a 32% increase in the money supply. During that time, the output of goods and services grew by 4%. So the money supply is growing 8 times faster than the goods and services that money buys. If you have an economy with 10 loaves of bread and $10, it's $1 a loaf. If the bank comes along and prints more money, and you now have $20, but there's still only 10 loaves of bread, well, now it's $2 for each loaf of bread. It's very simple supply and demand economics. We have to stop printing money, and that means stop the deficits. Government should live within its means and balance the budget. That is the first way we bring down inflation and interest rates. I would add that when the Prime Minister borrows money, and I mean $60 billion a year, he's competing with Canadians for that credit. There's a limited supply of credit. And when the government borrows more, then there's less for everyone else to borrow. That drives up interest rates. Anna could tell you that. She was a mortgage broker.
Absolutely.
So the more the government borrows, the more things cost. So we need to balance the budget by controlling spending. Secondly, we must axe the carbon tax. The cost is rising every year. 14 cents now, Trudeau wants to raise it to 61 cents a litre. You tax energy, you tax everything. Everything has to be moved by truck and train. And that's why you're seeing everything go up. I will axe the tax, balance the budget, bring home low prices. Thank you. So I think people should come to Canada for a new life and focus on our country and improving our country here. That said, we have freedom here. So you can protest anything you want. You can protest the color of the sky if you choose. You can protest any cause. It's your choice. And so I'm not going to interrupt people's protests. I'll let them have the freedom to say and do anything they want as long as they don't hurt another person. My goal is to have a small government with big citizens. If I were creating a brand new political party from scratch, it would be called the Mind Your Own Business Party. The government would mind its own business and let people decide what they think, how they raise their kids, how they spend their money, who they marry, how they worship God. All those things should be left up to individuals and families to decide for themselves. The first thing I would say, there's a ray of hope in that Canada was not like this before Justin Trudeau, and it won't be like this after he's gone. We need to restore a common sense immigration system. Terrorists should never be admitted to our country. If someone has a background in terrorism, they should never be able to get a visitor visa, let alone come here with a work visa or to immigrate as a permanent resident. We should be able to track every single person who comes and make sure that they have nothing in their, no terrorism or criminality in their background that threatens Canadians. But our immigration system is now falling apart because of the total incompetence of Justin Trudeau. We have refugees dumped onto the street because there's nowhere to go. Nobody planned for this. You know, we used to have a very well-planned immigration system where refugees came because they were sponsored by not-for-profits who would have an apartment ready for them. They would raise money to get them started, get them language training, a job. All of that was in place. We had an orderly, sensible immigration system before Trudeau, but it's all falling apart because when the photo op is done and the selfie is over, Trudeau moves on and doesn't care about the outcome. And the outcome is now people are suffering, families are divided, employers can't get workers, security threats are metastasizing. It's getting worse and worse. The good news is we can restore the common sense immigration system we had 8 years ago that will allow us to unite families, fill open jobs, rescue refugees, but also protect Canada's national interest, our economy, our health care, our housing, and most importantly, our security. Thank you. Thank you. On the first question, the current government has totally messed up the student program, the international student program. Unfortunately, it's actually costing lives. Some of these students are going back to India in body bags because they get here, they find they can't afford a home. Sometimes they're lied to by crooked consultants. Then they are desperate to try and earn a living because they have to pay back the debt that parents took on to bring them here in the first place. Some are committing suicide, others are ending up in trafficked by thugs and gangsters. That's not how the system should work. One, we need real enforcement. We should check on the front end to make sure all the admission letters to universities are accurate. We know this case of 700 students. I feel for them. They came here, they thought they were following the rules, they were ripped off by crooked consultants. They submitted the admission letters to the Government of Canada to get into the country. Why didn't the government check those admission letters at the beginning? Why didn't they do a survey and call, maybe even 1 in 5 of the universities or schools or colleges and say, did you actually write this letter? Is this a real admission letter? How is it possible the government missed 700 letters? They could have simply told the students at the time, you've got a phony letter, please fire your consultant and just get a proper admission letter from another university or college or school, and then we can admit you, and then we wouldn't have the problem today. But there's no competency in how these programs are being administered. And so we need to fix the student program for the benefit of the students, but also to protect the integrity of our system. With regards to Pakistan, I have spoken out against the Pakistani government for its persecution of religious minorities and women, and under my government, we will continue to do that. Pakistan has targeted the Ahmadi Muslims, Pakistani Christians, abused women, supported terrorism, and a Polyev-led government will hold the Pakistani government accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a resource issue. The leaders asked me to chime in on it. I've got a legal background. For 30 years, I was either a defense counsel or I was a Crown attorney. I know the struggles that police services have across this country in terms of tackling property crimes. And that's exactly what car theft is. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry for the criminal element. But to Pierre's point, we have so much personal violence happening that it's a real competing problem for police services. Do we address the personal violence issue or do we tackle the property crime? There needs to be a fine balance, but ultimately it comes down to a resource issue. Municipalities need to start funding these police services. We need to hire more police officers. We need to have specialized police officers to tackle this problem. So on your second point about the container issue, I'm quite concerned about that as well, and that's a Canadian border issue, and we need to have more resources and we need to give them the incentive to start examining and the tools to examine these containers before they leave this country. But even more importantly, the containers that are arriving from Asia are full of contraband, hard drugs, the fentanyl, the carfentanil, the illegal weapons, and not every container is being examined. That is
not even
problem.
close.
Not
I
even
think
close.
it's less than 1% of the containers coming in are examined, and I suspect the number is even lower for exporting containers. So we need to put the resources into reinforcing our border. We're wasting so much of our national security and public safety money right now on buying back hunting rifles. Trudeau seems to think that it's hunting rifles and hunters that are causing the crime. These are people with possession and acquisition licenses. They're already vetted, they're trained. Criminals don't have licenses for firearms. And we're spending billions of dollars going after that. That money could be put into border security to inspect things that are coming and going. Because you're right, it's a huge industry right now. They steal the car and it's out of the country within 24 hours. It's gone. We'll never get that vehicle back. And we need the ability to scrutinize what's getting on those boats so that we can stop creating the demand for auto theft that these illegal exports provide. Yes, do you want to follow up? Please. So as I said, we're going to take the money away from hunting rifle bans and buybacks, and we're going to put that money into frontline border security. And that will help us keep out fentanyl, illegal guns, and it will allow us to keep in the cars so that they are not illegally, that we're not allowing thieves to profit by exporting stolen cars. So there's no magic wand, but there is a law I will pass. It's called the dollar for dollar law. that requires the government find $1 of savings for each new dollar of spending. What that would do is it would force the heads of the departments to say, okay, well, if I'm going to hire somebody over here, I have to find savings over there. If I'm going to contract out to a high-priced consultant, well, I'm going to have to eliminate some bureaucracy somewhere else to cover it. They won't be able to simply stack more bureaucracy on top of existing bureaucracy on top of contracting out. The bureaucracy has grown by 40% in 8 years. That's just the personnel. The cost has grown by over 50%. So you're paying 50% more for federal bureaucracy than you were when Trudeau took office. And on top of that, he's contracting the work out. So you've got all these bureaucrats supposedly hired to run the government, more than ever before. Then he's saying that they're not enough, so I'm going to then contract out to consultants to do the same work. We're now spending $21 billion a year on consultants. That works out to $1,400 for every family in Canada. That's an increase of over 100% in 8 years. So what are you getting? You're paying 50% more for the bureaucracy and 100% more for consultants, all to deliver government services. Have your government services improved? You can't get a passport, the immigration system is a total mess, they can't manage the borders, they can't keep stolen cars in or drugs and guns out. So we're paying more for worse. The answer is to instill discipline in the system and require the bureaucracy find $1 of savings for each new dollar of spending. That's what a single mother does. You know, if she wants to build a new patio for the family, she passes up on the vacation, or she gets a deal on the lumber and a deal on the vacation and does both of them within the budget. That's what a small business does. But government has no incentive to keep costs down because it's just easier to pass the bill to the taxpayer. Because the bureaucrat making the decision doesn't pay the price. It's someone else's money. You need to pass a law to discipline the bureaucracy to live within its means. And often you can do better for less. Let me give you one quick example. When I was Employment and Social Services Minister, the Canadian National Institute for the Blind came to me and said, you're sending these discs out with audiobooks on them, CDs, so that blind people could listen to the book. And they said, we're not using CD players anymore. So why don't you get rid of that? And we have a technology where you can actually email a copy of the audiobook. And by the way, why don't you sign a deal to waive copyright with other English-speaking countries so that if they have a recording of a book that we don't have, and we have a recording of a book that they don't have, we can share them. What did we manage to do? We increased the number of books available to the blind in Canada by 400%, and we cut the cost of the program by 80% because we weren't mailing around CDs. So you can actually deliver better for less if you apply some common sense in the system. And that's what I will do as Prime Minister. Canada has 40 million people and roughly 16 million households. That means, on average, we have about 2.4 people in every home. So every time we bring in 2.5 people, we need to build a home.
That's right.
And so with 1 million people coming in, you need to build about 400,000, give or take. Is that right?
Approximately.
Yeah, just under 400,000. We built 200,000 last year. So that added a 200,000 home shortage to the already large shortage. In order for housing to become affordable at current rates of immigration, we need to build 6 million homes by 2030. Right now, we're on track to build about 1.4 million homes. So we have to choose. Either we're going to build more homes or we're going to have a big problem. because and we're seeing it now. We're seeing it not just with the house prices that Canadians are paying, but for the first time I can remember, refugees are arriving and the government is saying right to their face, please go live on the street because we have no space for you. So what I'm saying is we've got to speed up and lower the cost of building permits. We have to increase building annually by a multiple of 2 or 3. We have to build 100% more every year if we're going to have these levels of immigration. That's just the hard math. Or the scenes that you're witnessing right now on the streets of Toronto are going to be everywhere in Canada within 3 or 4 years. So we're heading towards a massive socioeconomic crisis in Canada where there just are not enough homes for our people. And if we don't start building, and I mean fast, within 2 or 3 years we're going to see absolute chaos and social breakdown in our streets. So we've got to build now. So are you talking strictly about housing? I'm going to incentivize the cities to speed up and lower the cost of permits. So I'm going to require every big city permit 15% more housing per year, or they'll lose their federal grants. Those that build more will get a building bonus. I'll require every federally funded transit station have high-density sky-rise apartments approved and built all around it. I'll sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land on which we can build hundreds of thousands of new homes. And I'll speed up immigration for building trade workers, the people who know how to build stuff, carpenters, framers, electricians, other building trades workers will get a fast track to help us build the homes that we need. That's how we're going to bring homes people can afford. Thank you, Bubji.